Mayoral Memo with Matthew Dickinson from Dubbo Regional Council.
Mayor of Dubbo Regional Council, Matthew Dickinson, how are you doing?
Yeah, good, thank you. Good to be chatting to you. This may be our last chat though, Rod. That'd be, well, in my mind, it'd be disappointing. For some other people, it might be okay, but we've got our mayoral elections on Thursday night, so in a fortnight's time, you might be talking to someone different.
Well, I hope it continues, whoever it is, but it's always good to talk with you. So the election for Mayor in Dubbo Regional Council is Thursday. New South Wales Government has delivered the budget. Was there anything in there for Dubbo Region?
Well, I suppose I was more focused when I looked through the budget to see what's in there for regional areas in general, because you hope that Dubbo and other regional areas will all pick up things out of a budget. And there's some things in there, $390 million for the regional emergency road repair. Now, that's a re-announcement, which we do see happen from time to time in government, don't we? The same money announced over and over. They initially announced that back in April, and then they've re-announced as part of the budget, but at least it's in the budget. It could have been taken out. $334 million for Regional Roads Fund. So that's good. That's mostly new money in that, so I thought that was good. The other thing that I would love to see is innovation. And I don't like saying this, Rod, but I saw some examples recently where Queenslanders were ahead of us. And that hurts me to say that. But we see up in Moreton Bay, there's a council there, or the Moreton Bay Council, I assume it is, and they're actually doing a program with their garbage trucks where they've got cameras fitted, they're feeding that all back into the cloud, using some AI to continually assess the condition of their roads every week, because the garbage trucks are going on those same roads every week, and then being proactive in repairing them. So it all sounds good to throw $334 million and $390 million at different roads, but I'd love to see more innovation, more ways that we can try and work out how we can be smarter with our money rather than just big numbers being rolled out. We also saw some money for housing, which is incredibly important. Dubbo has got lots of people wanting to move to it, so we want more money for housing. $100 million for regional infrastructure projects to unlock housing. So that could be helping with underground infrastructure, putting pipes in the ground, for example, to be able to then build houses on top of that. And I suppose one of the things I'd love to see there, again, is some innovation. I know Tamworth being quite innovative with their work, partnering up with Landcom and some landholders and council themselves to really deliver more housing onto the market quicker. You already know about our 3D printed toilet, which we're basically working as a stepped process to get to 3D printed housing. So again, is there some way we can be more innovative? Can we put funds aside to innovate rather than just keep spending money on the same old thing? So there's a few bits and pieces there for us. Regional education, they've got $769 million for 100 new preschools and public schools. A lot of those were in areas in Sydney, but some were in regional areas as well. So some bits and pieces there. I really struggle with one of them. They want to get more regional paramedics, and so they just said, instead of giving you $10,000 to move out of the city, we'll give you $20,000. But I think they're missing the point there, Rod. I don't think giving someone 10 or 20 grand is going to make you love moving to a regional area. I think just understanding, being aware of what's in a regional area, that's the sort of thing that'll make you move. A one-off sugar hit means you might move, but then you go, well, I'm sick of this now, I'll move away again. You want people who are passionate about regional areas, not someone that's coming along for the little sugar hit there. So again, I think they could be a bit more creative, a bit cleverer in the way they're spending some of that money.
I think you're right there. Now, what's happening with Rex?
Yeah, very disappointing. And I'm actually not blaming Rex for this one. This is a bigger problem than just Rex. Rex is so important to regional areas. Rex is very important to everywhere that's outside of Sydney that needs to access Sydney, because some locations are only serviced by Rex. Some locations have got multi-servicing. They might have QantasLink and Rex, for example. But in both examples, Rex is important either to provide a service or to keep the prices in check. They made an announcement on Friday to say that they're removing all services until the end of March next year from Armidale, and then 7 other locations in New South Wales, they'll be reducing services until the end of March next year. And I reached out to Warwick Lodge and John Sharp, and Warwick Lodge is the GM of Network Strategy, and John's the Deputy Chair, and ended up having a good long conversation with John Sharp. And he went through in detail and explained to me just the problem they have with getting enough pilots. And if you haven't got enough people in your coffee shop to make coffee, it might mean that people are lined up a little bit longer. But when you haven't got enough pilots, that means the plane can't fly. You can't say, sorry, we've only got one pilot today, it'll be right, we'll make do, because that's against the law. So it's pretty important to have enough pilots. They've been frustrated recently to say that they've had to actually cancel some flights, and that's not good for them. In the latest report that came out from the federal government in August or for August, Rex was the number one carrier in the land for on-time performance and the number one carrier in the land for lack of cancellations, or the low number of cancellations. They want to maintain that. They can only do that by reducing the services. They've got their pilot training academy. They've got one in Wagga and one in Ballarat. They put about 50 Rex pilots through that each year. Takes them a year before they can actually sit at the front of a plane, and then more time, maybe another 5 years before they can become a captain. What Rex talked about is the fact that they're spending the money on training these pilots. They're getting them up to the standard to fly. And then, unfortunately, some of the bigger airlines are coming along and poaching some of those. So that's a problem. I'd love to see all the airlines in Australia do more of their own pilot training and grow their own rather than rely on just Rex to do it. So hopefully Rex will come through this. They are very important to us in Dubbo and are very important to us across the regions.
All right. Also very important across the regions are GPs, and Dubbo Regional Council are making GP registers very welcome.
Trying our best to, and I think it's actually working. Many years ago, we started a program with the students training at the University of Sydney School of Rural Health here in Dubbo to make them very welcome, to basically roll out the red carpet, to do a range of things, a lot of initiatives there, to make them feel like they are really wanted and they're really important to our community, which they are. And then as a result of that, we're seeing a lot of those doctors are staying on after their education is finished and staying in as part of the community, even around the region. I know that there's some doctors that have ended up moving to different locations around the region after being through training here. Registrars come into Dubbo. There's a number of GPs in Dubbo that do registrar training. And when they go through that process and come out the end of that, then they can basically go wherever they want. We rolled out the red carpet to the registrars. We put on a night for them and just talked to them about Dubbo, and brought along some other people to talk to them about some of the things they can do in Dubbo, some of the examples about Dubbo, but really made sure that they knew that they were incredibly welcome. And just talking to them afterwards, the light bulb was coming on for a few of them. One doctor said to me that he'd been working in Sydney his whole life, education, working there his whole life, and he'd come out to a regional area, come out to Dubbo, and suddenly realised that because of the lack of commute time, he had an extra work week per month, because he said in Sydney he was commuting 40 hours a month, and suddenly he had that time back. And you and I understand that already, Rod. So for people in Sydney, you think they might finally get it, that they don't need to spend all that time commuting. They can be in a regional location. So I think it's just little things like that that might make a few of them say, you know what, we really are wanted here. Let's stay here. And some of those doctors were not just in Dubbo, they're in Wellington, and they're looking where they might go afterwards. So we'll keep doing things like that we think can hold on to those doctors a bit longer.
And just sticking with health for a short period, wound view. Tell me about this.
Yeah, I had a very interesting experience last week, Rod. I had photographs and videos and 3D imagery taken of a huge gash that I had in my arm. Would have required about 40 stitches, I think. Luckily for me, it was only a silicone wound that was put on my arm as part of a $6.5 million research project here at the University of Sydney School of Rural Health. And that's another important part of the training they do here. There are research projects that people can do. There was a longitudinal one done finished a few years ago, that was about a 10-year research project called Archer that was looking at some longitudinal studies with children and hormones and their state of mental health. So a very important project. This one will be important as well, because when they do the final analysis of this, and this is a multi-year program they'll be working on, when this is all finished, it'll mean that people can have a wound, a large wound, an open wound, anywhere in the nation, and it probably will roll out internationally as well. And there'll be able to be people looking at that remotely with expertise, using AI initially to do an initial inspection, but then using people to have a final inspection of that. And a smartphone will be all you'll need at the other end. Now, typically, you would still have a medical professional with you to actually make sure that smartphone angle is right, etc. But it means that you can have that wound management by experts no matter where you are. Again, $6.5 million spent on this project overall. This is something that I think is a bit of a wake-up call to people that are in Sydney and think you've got to be in Sydney. These sort of research projects can happen regionally, and there's one happening right here in Dubbo.
Wonderful news. And quickly, you're in Gawler for the RDA Summit.
Yeah, I went over there on Friday. I was asked to come and speak at their summit. This is the RDA South Australia Rural Summit or Regional Summit. And this is an annual event they have that talk about how to keep increasing population and increasing the outcomes for regional areas. And it was interesting because I was in Toowoomba speaking at another conference, and someone came over and talked to me and said that they'd been looking at various figures across the nation, and one area that stood out to them was Dubbo. Dubbo had good growth, much better growth than many regional areas, and they wanted to know what the secret was, and so they invited me over to Gawler to speak at their conference there. A couple of hundred people in the room, lots of people focused on regional outcomes, so it was quite an interesting conference to be at regardless. But it was really about, they wanted to learn from Dubbo and what sort of things that we were doing in Dubbo to really keep promoting the population and keep growing that population. And a lot of it was to do with the way we've promoted Dubbo over the years, and certainly COVID helped. But COVID was there for anyone. So I think a lot of the work that we did before COVID came along put us in a really good spot when people were looking to get out of Sydney during COVID. Well, Dubbo was in their mind. There was some presence of mind for Dubbo in there, and then they went, well, if we're going to move regional, I've heard about this place called Dubbo. So I think that certainly helped us. But anyway, I've just tried to summarise a 1 hour presentation to 2 minutes, Rod. So there was a bit more than that I said, but that was certainly one of the important aspects of it.
Good that you can get on that stage and promote the region and, of course, the city of Dubbo. Now, tell us about the sister city and the kids that have just left.
A very excited group of kids I waved off from the airport yesterday. This is part of our sister city relationship with Minakamo. We've had that sister city relationship with Minakamo for 34 years now, and we've done regular student exchanges. Of course, during COVID, all of those activities stopped, and so we've started them up again this year. We just had a couple of months ago a group of students from Minakamo here in Dubbo, and I went to the farewell night where the students were farewelling, or the local students that they'd been staying with were farewelling the Japanese students, and you can imagine there were a sea of tears in the room there as these kids that had only known each other for 2 weeks had formed a very good relationship very quickly. There's a group that went over yesterday, 10 students went over and 2 chaperones. They're subsidised by Dubbo Regional Council, but they've still got to pay a fair amount themselves, and they'll spend almost 2 weeks in Japan, most of that time in Minakamo. They've got some other activities as well. And again, I'm sure the farewell night over there will be full of tears as they say goodbye to those students, and many of those will have lifelong relationships, but it just continues to promote that relationship between Minakamo and Dubbo, and certainly between Japan and Australia. So that's a fantastic relationship we've got, and I absolutely love to see it continuing on now with this latest student exchange group.
Best of luck with the election Thursday. Thanks for talking with us today.
Always my pleasure, Rod. Thank you.
Mayoral Memo with Matthew Dickerson from Dubbo Regional Council.